Alone, we are a solitary violin, a lonely flute, a trumpet singing in the dark. Together, we are a symphony. These are the poetic words from the Violin Conspiracy, called an essential lesson in artistry, prejudice, and persistence. Brendan Slocum's new novel has received rave reviews from the New York Times, the Washington Post, and even famed dancer Misty Copeland. I sit down with Brendan, coming up next.
Live from Los Angeles, this is the Special Report with Areva Martin.
A Good Morning America book club pick, The Violin Conspiracy, is a suspense novel about a Black classical musician on the rise in the predominantly white classical music world. As the character Ray McMillan navigates racism and prejudice, a shocking theft of his precious violin sends him on a desperate quest to recover his great-great-grandfather's heirloom violin. And all of this is happening as Ray prepares to compete in the world's most prestigious musical competition. This novel, The Violin Conspiracy, will keep you on the edge of your seats. And Brendan Slocumb, the author, the accomplished musician, the music teacher, is here to help us understand how he came up with such a incredible book. And first of all, Brendan, I want to say congratulations. You are a first-time author. And man, when I was reading about the reviews on this book, it was pages and pages and pages and pages. I think you have over like 3,000 reviews on Amazon, which is huge. So how are you feeling in terms of all of the accolades and the positive responses you've gotten for the book?
Well, thank you so much for all of the kind words. It is amazing. This smile is 100% genuine. I've got sore cheeks because I haven't stopped smiling since February. It's incredible.
I mean, man, this book, like I said, it's like over I started reading, I said, okay, I don't have like a week to read all Brendan's reviews on his book. I get the point. This is a great book. But let's jump into it because, it was one of the most anticipated books of the year. So many publications said that this was the book everybody was waiting for. How do you, a music teacher, an accomplished musician, what was the impetus to, expand your artistry to writing a novel?
Wow. It was actually the summer of 2020. COVID-19 happened. As it was one good thing that happened as a result of COVID. As a working musician and teacher, all of my rehearsals and weddings and receptions and lessons and recitals, everything was canceled. Everything stopped. And that was my main form of revenue. And with COVID, us having to be at home for the majority of our lives at that time, it gave me an opportunity to delve more into writing. I'd written a manuscript like 20 years ago, which I hope no one ever sees because it's terrible. And I came across an article that said selling books in the age of COVID. So I decided, I'll give it a shot. I got a letter back that said that the manuscript that I sent in was absolutely terrible, but I've got a good voice, so I should try writing what I know, and it's not science fiction.
Wait a minute. So you see this article that says if you're at home with nothing to do and you've lost all your income, become an author, right? Something like that. Write a book. And you wrote The Violin Conspiracy and sent it to an agent or to a publishing house?
Well, I sent my first novel that I hope no one ever sees. I sent that one in.
Okay.
Yeah. And I got some honest feedback back, and it's like, this is terrible, but your voice is good. You should try writing what you know. And it's definitely not science fiction. So I wrote the first chapter of The Violin Conspiracy, which was the main character, Ray, sitting in his high school classroom. It was originally a YA novel, but I talked to my agent and let's do something a little more adult and make it a mystery. And Violin Conspiracy was born.
Wow. I mean, Okay, from that horrible manuscript that you hope no one finds to coming up with all of the twists and turns. I think that's what, has resulted in everyone saying this Violin Conspiracy is such a, page turner, edge of your seat kind of book. How did you figure all that out? Like you have a rivalry between families, you have issues of race, you have prejudice, you have, music competition, maybe even, some mob activity. There's all these different things that you wouldn't necessarily think go with a classical musician.
Wow, that's a great question. I took a lot of feedback. I got a great deal of feedback, people that I would let read some of the chapters and, well, why don't you think about this, or why don't you go in this direction? And my agent had a lot to do with helping me to develop the story. A lot of the actual instances were taken from my own life experiences, and I just decided to put them down on paper. I figured, I think my life has been pretty interesting. Maybe someone else will find them interesting too, and we'll just beef it up a little bit with some of the rivalries and competitions and the mystery element, and it worked.
So, okay, are you Ray McMillan, basically?
Am I Ray McMillan? 92% of Ray is Brendan.
Wow. Okay. Okay. So this is not quite an autobiography. So some of it is fictionalized,
yes,
but a substantial part of it is your own experiences. So let's start with Ray the young man. Were you in a family where your mom was saying, stop with all that noise, go get a job at Popeye's Chicken, and grandma was over there saying, no, boy, you just keep playing that instrument. You're going to be somebody someday. Was that your life?
I'm going to just on the record, my mom is not mom in the book. I promise. Okay. My mom was as supportive as she could be. She would never, try to actively stop me from pursuing music. That was not my mom. That is totally fictionalized. Grandma Nora, on the other hand, is my actual maternal grandmother. And when I tell you, as I was writing her dialogue, I could hear her over my right shoulder just speaking into my ear, and she was that exact sweet woman that Ray loves so much in the book. So that was totally real. The actual
why did mom become the naysayer if Brendan's mom was the big supporter? Whose idea was that?
That was me as well. We all go through a lot of we all have adversity, and in communities of color, sometimes people just don't understand. It's like, okay, why do you like that classical music? What is that? Why do you get that? And people just don't get it. And a lot of people say, well, mom was just a terrible, horrible character. And I like to make people think about it a little bit. Was she just a nasty, self-centered person, or was this her way of trying to protect Ray from failure? You could look at it two different ways. So I really wanted to leave that up to the reader to decide.
Your mom is complex. You're right. And lots of mothers, tell their kids, don't fool around with, that music business. Nobody makes any money. It's tough. Yeah. Get you a good, 9-to-5 job that'll pay the bills. So I definitely see all of those sides and the potential that mom was not the villain, but really the protector. Let's talk about the issues of race and prejudice. They're pretty much woven throughout the book. Mm-hmm. How much of that comes again from your own experiences as a Black musician playing in a predominantly white classical music field?
Man, there have been so many instances, some intentional, some unintentional, but I mean, it does happen. I have gone into places to play. I've sat down and I've played, and people will look at me and say, wow, you're so much better than I thought you would be. And, why would you think that? I went to the same schools as you. I had the exact same instruction. Why would I not be as capable? I've gone into conduct like district and regional orchestras, and I will walk into the room and people will think that I'm the custodian there to empty the garbage and to move, furniture. And it really does happen until I pick up a violin and start playing. And then they're like, oh, I've walked down the hall in my shirt and tie in schools, and people say, are you one of the cleaning people? It's things like that happen regularly. And, a lot of people just are unaware of what they're doing and what they're saying a lot of times. And sometimes people just totally get it. And they just, I don't know, I can't speak for everyone, but sometimes it's pretty ugly.
Yeah, I know you have a passage in the book where Ray goes to play at a wedding, and the father, the white father of the bride, has that same reaction, like, are you really up to the task? Can you really perform? And then he actually tries to get Ray out to like leave, push him out of the venue. Was that a real experience where you've actually shown up to perform? And not only did they doubt your ability to perform, but they actually tried to, push you out.
That was a modified version of an event that actually did take place. That really happened with the string quartet that I was playing in when I was in college. And that was the first time that I really saw evil evil and hatred in someone's eyes. And it stuck with me for decades, just seeing that and feeling that. His actual words were, "You ruined my daughter's wedding." Not because we played poorly, we played great. I think it was just because of the way that we looked, and it was an experience.
Yeah, and we know a lot of white spaces in classical music is a white space. Just the color of your skin is seen as a weapon. It's seen as a sign of violence. Wow, that's interesting. How did you conjure up Brendan, not Ray, but how did Brendan, where'd you get the energy and the will to just keep going and to keep overcoming those obstacles and being willing to just walk back into spaces knowing that you may walk into that same person at the next, concert that you attended?
It had a great deal to do with the mentors that I had in my life. Just one person. It takes one person to believe in you. And I was very fortunate to have several people that kept pushing me to keep going. There are several times that I did want to quit. I was like, I can't do this. This is too tough. What is the point? I'm never going to be able to make it. I won't ever get my due. But my violin teacher in college, Dr. Rochelle Vetter Huang, she is the person that I credit the most for everything that has come into my life. She taught me how to play the violin. She taught me how to teach. She kept me going. I owe everything to her. And one of the main characters in the book, Dr. Janice Stevens, is based on her. And so I really wanted to do everything that I could to pay homage to her and let her know how appreciative I am for everything that she has done for me over the course of my career.
Wow. Is she still living, your teacher?
Yes, she is. She's the first person that I let read the manuscript when I finished.
That was going to be my question. What was her response when she saw her character? Did she think you nailed her character?
She was actually quite pleasantly surprised. She said, she wrote me and she said, "Brendan, I can't believe you remember this lesson. I can't believe you remember this particular, you remember what I played the day that I came and auditioned at UNC when I was auditioning for the violin teacher job." And my response was, "Why would I not remember that? You changed my life. I remember everything. I remember what you wore that day. I remember everything." And she's just incredible, and I love her to death. And thank you, Dr. Huang. Thank you.
Wow, that's an incredible tribute. And, we've been talking a lot recently on the special report about teachers and how teachers are under attack. And this is, why you just gave the best reason for why we need to love, revere, and respect our teachers, because it's a teacher. Literally, you're saying that changed the whole trajectory of your life.
Absolutely.
And we know that so many people have that same testimony about some teacher that encouraged them, that, was there for them. And they can look back and, know that their life would have been different but for that teacher. Mm-hmm. All right, Brendan, let's talk about this family heirloom. How much of that is fiction versus, reality?
So the theft of the violin actually took
place. Before we even get to the theft, what about the existence of it and the giving of it to you on Christmas by Grandma Nora?
A lot of people ask me, "Do you have a Strad? Is that real?" I do not have a Stradivarius violin. That whole part was made up. My grandmother, I spent a lot of time in her attic just looking around at stuff, but I never found a violin up there. So that part was actually fictionalized.
And for those folks who may not know, what a Strad is or how unique and, expensive it is. Just give us a little glimpse about what a Strat would mean to a violin player like you.
Wow. If I had a Stradivarius violin, I would be probably not doing this interview right now. I would be on a world tour performing right now. It is the top of the top of the top of violins ever made. No one really knows what makes a Strad so incredible. The only way to find out is to break one open and examine it from the inside out. And no one's willing to do that to a multi-million-dollar instrument. So the world may never know, but it is the top of the line instrument.
So you obviously, as a trained classical violinist, you knew about the Strat, heard about it, read about it. So you make it the central piece, this family heirloom. But did Grandma Nora, or the real name of your grandmother, actually give you a family heirloom that was a violin, even though it wasn't a Strat? Did that happen?
My grandmother's, that actually is my actual grandmother, Grandma Nora. That's her for real. No, she did not. I did play for her a lot, but she never did have a violin to give to me. I'm sure she would have if she had one.
Yes, because she's one of your biggest fans.
Oh, yeah.
So the story, obviously is about Ray and all the challenges he faces in this predominantly white world of classical musicians. But then this heirloom, this family heirloom, takes on kind of a sub-story and the fight over it. Now, interesting parties fighting. Tell us how you decided who these warring parties would be, because I found that to be very interesting.
Well, I figured, family dynamics, everyone has an element of dysfunction in their family, everyone. So everyone can relate to a little bit of family dysfunction. I thought that would be really interesting. It's like, you think people would be happy for you if your family members especially, oh, you've got this multi-million-dollar instrument, you're going to do so well, that's great. But, it turns out, well, you should really just sell it. Just sell it and split the money with us. We deserve it. We earned it. You could go get another instrument that's just as good, with a couple of $1 million. Why don't you do that for us? And, that particular, we all have that dynamic going on in our family at some point. And with the other, let's say the other family elements would be the Marx family, who were the descendants of the slave owner that owned Ray's great-great-grandfather. And they try to lay claim to the instrument because they say that Ray's great-great-grandfather stole the instrument from the slave master, before he died. And that adds a whole nother element to what's going on in the story.
So you're writing this during COVID lockdowns, during the massive Black Lives Matter protests, during the height of our grieving over the murder of George Floyd. How much of that played a part in the slave owner narrative and some of the other narrative around race?
Well, the George Floyd murder really it inspired me to come out with this story, because I really felt like, with the world witnessing what took place with George Floyd, that people would be much more receptive to these types of stories. There was one point where, it was almost viewed as being too far-fetched to ever happen. Things like this don't happen to people. And people like me who experience them every day, yeah, sure, it does happen. But when people see it live on TV happening, it's like, whoa, wait a minute, maybe things like this do happen. So it was like just a crack in the door, so I could go in and say, okay, these things really do happen, and let me expand on it, and let me tell you what really goes on and how much of it really goes on daily, regularly, for people who look like me. And I think that people actually were much more receptive to it once that was, once the world saw what happened.
Yeah, another interesting topic, issue that you touch in the book is this notion of privilege and who gets to make a career out of music. Why'd you go there?
I went in that direction because it's a real thing. It really is. It's true. And I know a lot of people who are basically afraid to experience new things because that's not for you. That's, I shouldn't be in there. I can't go in there. I can't go to the theater. I can't go to a classical music concert. I'm going to look out of place. I'm going to be out of place. I don't belong there. I don't have the right zip code. I don't have the right amount in my bank account. I'm not the right skin color. I see that all the time. And there have been often times when I have gone to a concert and, I've been the only Black person there at a classical music concert. And, of course you get stares and it's just like, well, why are you here? It's like, why is this music being kept just for a certain group of people? It is amazing, life-changing music that needs to be shared. It was written to be shared for everyone. It's not just for an elitist group of people. And I really want people to understand that music is universal. It's for everybody. It's the only thing that you can go across the world and not speak the language and have an instant connection. It's for everybody. And I really wanted to make that point to everyone in this book.
Yeah, and I know you have a podcast, How Music Can Save Your Life, and I imagine you do a lot of interviews and you talk a lot about, this very topic about how universal music is and how it can bring people together. It is universal language, but this classical music genre, I saw a stat that says only less than 2% of classical musicians are Black.
Yes.
And I imagine that number hasn't changed much since the time that great teacher taught you to play the violin to today. So why has that number remained so static or so low?
I think the number is low just because of opportunity and exposure. I believe that if inner city kids, rural kids, everyone are exposed to classical music really early on, that it would make a major, major difference. And instead of just having a bell ring in the hallway at school, let's have music playing. Mondays is classical Monday. Tuesdays is bluegrass Tuesdays. Wednesday is hip hop Wednesday. Thursday is, rock and roll Thursday. And Friday is a free for all. Let's do that. Let's expose the kids to it. It's not a matter of, well, you can only listen to this if. No, it's for everybody. And we need to expose our kids to it very early on. And if we do that, I think that number will begin to rise. And just the opportunity. Let's put instruments in kids' hands early on. I know that there are several programs that, you have a kid or elementary school students going to concerts once a year. Instead of once a year, let's take them once a month. Let's take the $33 million to renovate a hall instead of renovating a hall on the north side of town. Let's use that money to take the musicians all across the county so that people can have an opportunity to hear them who can't make it to the north side. Things like that would definitely help with exposure, and those numbers would begin to change rapidly.
I'm thinking back to my own experiences. It was a teacher, not a school program, but a teacher on her own that took me and another group of kids from our class, maybe I was in 4th or 5th grade, to my first classical music concert. It wasn't sanctioned by the school. It wasn't a part of our school's curriculum, but it was a teacher who believed, like you believe, that kids should be exposed to classical music. Sadly, we don't see enough of that happening.
All right. I agree.
You touch on some other topics in the book that I want to ask you about. And one is this passage in Violin Conspiracy where there's an interaction with a police officer, with Ray, a traffic stop. And, we've been talking a lot about traffic stops and unarmed Black men who get shot and killed, when it starts off as a pretty benign traffic stop. Why include that in the book?
Because that was an actual event. The only thing that did not happen between Ray and Brendan, Ray went to jail, Brendan did not, but that was an actual thing. I was in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, with a friend of mine. We were driving cross country, just, it was summer or something to do, both teachers. I was in a brand new 2000, this is pre-GPS, 2000 black Honda Accord. So I'm a Black man driving a black car in the deep South. I knew what was up. I was extremely careful. My friend who was white, he was just, what are you talking about? I'm like, okay. So this is pre-GPS. That my hotel is on this side of the street. I'm on the far right. It's like, oh, it's over there. I have to turn. It's a Sunday evening. Sun is just going down. Put on my left signal, turn, lights and sirens. I'm like, oh, here we go. Here it comes. Here it comes. And he made me get out of the car on my hands and knees with the gun drawn on me. And I thought I was done. And then a few minutes later, he looked at my driver's license and said, you can go. It's like, what was that for? He's like, you made an illegal lane change. It's like, you have me on my knees with a gun drawn on me because of an illegal lane change. Are you kidding? And, I just think that had my friend not been in the car, there's no telling what would have happened. There's no telling. And it terrified me, and that really changed me. And I wanted to share that experience because I tell people that, and I get every excuse. Oh, well, maybe you did something wrong. Maybe he didn't think that you could hear him, so he was on his bullhorn. Maybe he was just, I don't know. There was tons of excuses for why this officer did what he did, but I really wanted to include that in the book so that people understood that things like this really do happen.
There's so many passages, where you deal with race and racial issues. And it feels like to me, Brendan, you really wanted your readers to understand, the challenges and the obstacles that this character Ray had to fight through to make it to, the ultimate goal is to get to this big competition at the end of the book. Is that how you think most musicians who that less than 2%, they feel like to be a classical musician as a Black person in America right now? You've got to be willing to go through what Ray goes through in this book.
I think not only as a musician, but a lot of us Black people, we go through these things. We truly do go through these things. But as musicians, yes, we honestly do. And a lot of people that I've talked to, I've met so many incredible people as a result of this book. And I get messages regularly, on different platforms, people saying, that same thing happened to me. That is my exact same experience. I'm so glad that you put this out for the world to see, because just like you, I've said these things to people and they just don't believe it. But now that it is in print and it is there for the world to see, people are beginning to take notice that this really does happen. So I've gotten a lot of positive feedback, and a lot of thanks for people, for me putting stories like this out there, because that they really do happen.
Yeah, for having the courage to share those stories. One of the reviews I read said that when you read Violin Conspiracy, you feel like you are listening to a concert. Was that intentional, or is that just how you express yourself as a trained musician?
Well, as a musician, we go through so much, and one thing that people say to me is, I didn't realize how much work you had to put into performing and preparing for performance. And as I was writing, I know what it's like. I know what it feels like when you're playing something that you feel so passionately about, when you get to express the composer's intent, through your instrument and through your music. So I wanted to share that feeling with non-musicians. I wanted anyone who had never played an instrument to understand the joy and the passion that we have as musicians, and to just bring them into the world that we get to be in every day. And it really is a privilege to be in this world, and I really wanted to draw people in. And my first couple of drafts, I would write the musical descriptions, and I was very, very technical. Staccato here, martele there, rubato here, and people just, I don't know what this is like a foreign language. But when I went back and put more imagery in, what does it make me feel like? It makes me feel like a Cupid jumping from cloud to cloud instead of having to run really fast and zip here. And it made a lot more sense to people. And like, wow, okay, I could see that. And as people listen to the music mentioned in the book, they really get a sense of, wow, is this what it's like for you? Yeah, absolutely. Every time I pick up an instrument.
What's the response been from your students? Because you still teach, right?
I am still teaching, yes.
Okay. So what are your students? What do they feel? What have they said to you about the book?
I have gotten the fact that my students say that they're proud of me means everything, because I've seen a lot of them. I taught them, the kid that I've taught the longest, he was in 3rd grade. Now he's in his 30s, and just former students telling me how proud they are of me, and how they could hear me as they were reading the book. I could hear you saying these words, and I knew it was you, and it just means everything. It means everything to me, and I'm just so happy that I'm able to share this with them. And they were huge in formulating the way that I am today. Just being the kids that they are, and allowing me to teach them the way that I do things, and it's been amazing.
What about the white classical musicians that you've either played with or been in the presence of, do you think they're picking up this book saying, damn, we got to do better?
Yes, I've actually gotten a very good response from a lot of my white counterparts, and the first thing usually that happens is I get an apology. I'm like, there's no need to apologize. It's not about asking for an apology. It's just about being aware. It's just about awareness that your perception is different than mine. My perspective is just, it's not bad, it's not wrong, it's just different. Know that everyone is not the same.
Wait, Brendan, you're not calling out racism to say that's your perspective. Racism is racism. And maybe some of those people do need to apologize.
Oh, okay, yeah, fair enough.
Maybe the kid that they kicked out of a concert, or, some musician that, they crushed, not because they weren't competent or capable, but just because they didn't look like them.
You're right. Fair enough.
Oh, some of them accountable.
Yes. I can just speak for myself. The ones that I know, people that I know, and that I've had interactions with, I just want them to be aware that there are different perspectives to everything. And I had one guy. I was in Dallas doing a book talk and a performance, and he read the book and he said, "I didn't believe a word of it until I read your author's notes. And when I saw that these were your real life experiences, it really made me reevaluate how I see things, how I see people, how I look at people of color, how I look at classical musicians. It really did do that for me, and I want to thank you for that." And I'm like, you know what? I'm so happy that happened, and it's changing minds and it's opening hearts, and I think that's great.
Why did he say he didn't believe a word of it?
I think that was he just saw things through a certain lens. He's like, well, because it didn't happen to me, how would it possibly happen to someone else?
Okay.
Yeah, and it's like, we're different. We are different people, and my perspective and my perception of things is not the same as yours. And you just have to. A lot of people came to that realization after reading this, and they were just like, whoa. I realize that I've been looking at everything through the same lens, and you can't do that. It's just, that's not how the world is.
So, we can't give away who stole the violin, but we talked about the fact that this heirloom is stolen, and there's this mad, rush, effort, chase to find it, because Ray needs this violin, because Ray has this important international, Olympic type competition. But I know you're working on your second novel. So how does the second novel relate to what's happening at the end of Violin Conspiracy?
Well, I've actually finished my second novel. It's being edited right now. My editors are going through it. When my editor accepted my final draft, I did a little dance. If you go to Instagram, you can see me doing it. I was very happy. People ask me, is this the end of Ray's story? And I'm never going to say never. I won't say that I'm not going to write anything else about Ray. But what I'm going to do in each of my books, I'm about to start writing my third book, probably in a couple of weeks. I take one element.
But number two, your second book that you finished, congratulations on that. I can see why you were doing a happy dance. It's not a continuation of Violin Conspiracy.
Not a continuation, but there is one element. What I'm doing with my books, subsequent books, one element is going to play a very important role in the next book. So at the end of the Violin Conspiracy, one of the main characters has been named for my second book, which is called Symphony of Secrets. And the main character is mentioned. So I'm going to tell everyone to read the last chapter very, very carefully of the Violin Conspiracy.
So you're going to be like the Scott Turow who writes all of his books on legal thrillers. You're going to write violin, classical music thrillers. Is that what I'm sensing here?
There will definitely be a musical element to each of my books, because that advice that I was given, write what you know, and I know music. I want to be the Stephen King of music. I'm trying to create a new genre, musical thrillers.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And what about movies, series? I'm sure you've had conversations, maybe are already in a deal to have the Violin Conspiracy come to the big screen.
Sony has opted the rights to the Violin Conspiracy, and a miniseries, much like The Queen's Gambit, is in development right now. And my only request was that I get to play a cameo at some part, maybe old Ray at the end. I don't know.
Okay, last question. Who is going to be Ray McMillan in the Sony miniseries? No, you can't play Ray. You're going to do the cameo.
Yeah, I wish. I have no idea. But I did say whomever they choose to play Ray, that whoever it is, they've got to take violin lessons. If they're not a violinist, they've got to take lessons, because I want it to be as authentic as possible. My friends would never let me live it down. Brendan, what was up with that guy holding a violin like this?
Okay, if you had the choice, and I know you're not going to be like, making all the major decisions as a new executive producer, who would you choose, though, if they gave you that, major decision to make?
So many people could play the role. I've seen so many talented people, but one name that comes to mind, and if you haven't seen him, check him out, Austin Goolsby. Yeah.
What? I'm not familiar. What has he been in?
He is a violinist that is just amazing. And you know what? I probably said his first name wrong. Last name is Goolsby. I probably said it wrong.
But he's an actor?
I don't know if he acts or not, but he's definitely a violinist. And when you look at him, that is Ray.
You feel like the person needs to be a musician violinist first.
I think so.
Okay.
Because all of the themes in the book, they've probably been through, and they can relate to everything, and it would be a much more natural performance. But, that's me. What do I know? I just write a book. I don't know anything.
Yeah, I'm thinking, there's some people I'm thinking of, and I don't know if they play the violin or not. So I think it's Randall Goolsby.
Randall, that's it. I'm sorry. I say Austin. My apologies. Randall Goolsby, yes.
Well,
that would be perfect.
You just gave Randall a big plug, and maybe Sony will, knock on Randall's door and say, hey, we got this new miniseries that we're, producing. What an amazing journey from sitting at home, having your weddings and all of your concerts canceled, to writing, best-selling, highly acclaimed book, getting optioned by Sony, finishing your second book, getting ready to start your third book. Boy, is this a story about how everything is possible, and never say never. What an amazing story.
Absolutely.
Congratulations to you, Brendan. Best of luck. Can't wait to see the Violin Conspiracy, on the big screen, on the mini screen, wherever it ends up. And I love this notion. There's going to be musical mysteries, thrillers, all centered around, music. And hopefully we'll get more Black folks playing the violin as a result of your blow up. Maybe that'll be one of the unintended but really important consequences of everything that's happening good for you in your life at this moment. So thank you, my friend. Be well. Best of luck to you.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
What a heartwarming story. My goodness. People did so many incredible things during the lockdown. People started growing vegetables, and, some people wrote novels. And obviously, Brendan figured out how to use his musical background and all of his classical musical training to, he kind of stumbled on another way of expressing his art. And that's what this best-selling book. And when I tell you, thousands and thousands of people have reviewed the book, and the response has just been overwhelming. So I'm not surprised to hear that Sony came knocking on his door. I'm sure there were others who, like he said, The Queen's Gambit, this is a perfect book for that kind of series. So, people are winning as a result of COVID. You look at, what happened as a positive result, and this is a classic example. No pun intended. All right. My words to live by before I get out. Until the lion learns how to write, every story will glorify the hunter. And clearly, in this example and in this interview, Brendan is the lion, and he learned how to write. And the stories that will be written about classical music will no longer just center whiteness. The stories will center those people of color like Brendan and others who persevered and continue to pursue their dreams and their passion despite prejudices and obstacles and all the crap that was thrown at them. So you just keep roaring, Lion Brendan. I'll be safe out there. Remember, we're all in this together.